How can a person be a walking biological weapon and feel perfectly healthy? If the doctors told you that you were killing people just by breathing, just by cooking a meal, even though you felt perfectly fine, would you believe them? And what if they ripped you from your home, exiled you to an island, and locked you away for the rest of your life? All for a crime you didn't even know you were committing. The story we are telling today is one of the most tragic and complex medical mysteries in history. This is not the story of a monster. This is the story of a stubborn woman who insisted she was the victim. This is the story of Mary Mallon, or, as the world would come to know her, Typhoid Mary. This is not just the story of a virus. It is the story of hubris, of class warfare, of the contempt shown to immigrants, and the brutal war between one woman's individual freedom and the safety of an entire population. Let us meet our protagonist, Mary Mallon. Mary was an Irish immigrant who arrived in New York in the early 1900s. She was strong, stubborn, independent, and a fantastic cook. Mary's one passion was her work and her freedom. She never got sick, not even a cold. She rose quickly through the ranks, working in the kitchens of the wealthiest families in New York. Her meals were legendary, and everywhere she went, she left a trail of death. The other main character in this story, the hunter, was Dr. George Soper. Soper was not a medical doctor. He was a sanitary engineer. He was a disease detective. His job was to find the source of outbreaks. In 1906, Soper was hired to investigate a bizarre typhoid outbreak that had struck the family of a wealthy New York banker in Oyster Bay, Long Island. This was an impossible case. Typhoid fever at the time was a disease of filth, of the slums, of contaminated water. But this family lived in pristine luxury. They drank the cleanest water in New York. It was the last place on earth a typhoid outbreak should have occurred. Soper investigated everything the family ate, everything they drank. He found nothing. Until he asked the critical question, "Have you hired anyone new recently?" The family stated that just 3 weeks before the outbreak, they had hired a new Irish cook, and that cook had mysteriously quit and vanished just after the family got sick. Soper began to hunt for this cook, Mary Mallon. He tracked her employment history, and what he found chilled his blood. Before we continue this incredible medical mystery, if you love history's most complex stories and battles for justice, hit that subscribe button right now for Living the Stories. Soper found the records for 8 families that Mary had worked for over the last decade, and in 7 of those 8 families, a typhoid outbreak had occurred. Mary Mallon was a carrier. She was death, walking from kitchen to kitchen. She was the one linking all these impossible outbreaks. Soper was convinced that Mary was an asymptomatic carrier, that she carried the virus in her body, shedding it, but never getting sick herself. Now, he had to find her. Soper tracked Mary down to the kitchen of another wealthy family in Manhattan. He cornered her. This was not a polite conversation between a health official and a citizen. This was an accusation. Soper demanded samples from Mary: blood, urine, feces. Mary Mallon was humiliated in a way she had never been before. She was a clean, pious, hard-working woman. This man, not even a real doctor, was accusing her of spreading a filthy disease and demanding her bodily fluids. Mary was enraged. She saw this as an attack on her class, her gender, and her immigrant status. This was contempt. She grabbed the nearest weapon, a carving fork, or perhaps a meat cleaver, and she chased Dr. Soper right out of the kitchen. Mary didn't believe in the science. She believed in her experience, and she was not sick. But Soper didn't give up. He knew this woman could kill hundreds. He involved the New York City Health Department and the police. This would not be a request. This would be an arrest. The police raided the home where Mary worked. Mary fought back. She hid for 4 hours until they finally found her cowering in a closet. She was dragged out, kicking and screaming like a criminal. They took her to a hospital. They forcibly took her samples. Soper was right. Her body was teeming with live typhoid bacteria. But Mary still wasn't sick, and she screamed that she had committed no crime. The health department was in a crisis. What do you do? The law did not allow them to imprison a healthy person, but she was a walking public health menace. And so, they made one of the most ruthless decisions in medical history. They exiled her. They transported her to a small, isolated island off the coast of New York, North Brother Island, a quarantine hospital. They gave her the name Typhoid Mary, and they locked her in a small cottage to live there for the rest of her life. Her only crime was being an asymptomatic carrier. Mary was furious. She was a prisoner, not a patient. She was isolated, believing this was a conspiracy against her because she was poor, Irish, and a woman. She spent years in that cottage. She was the victim. She was the subject of injustice. This was her narrative. This is the story of resistance. After years of quarantine, she sued the city of New York for her freedom. This was her first fight back. The lawsuit brought public sympathy. The press began to turn. Was it right to imprison a healthy woman forever just because of something she couldn't control? A new health commissioner, sympathetic to her plight and the bad public relations, reviewed her case. They made a deal. They agreed to release her after years of exile, but on one absolute, unbreakable condition. She had to sign a legal affidavit, an oath, swearing that she would never, ever cook for anyone ever again. It was the only skill she had. It was her identity, but she wanted freedom. She signed the paper. She was freed. But Mary was now a pariah. Typhoid Mary was the most famous and hated woman in America. She couldn't get a job, except for the one job she knew how to do. She tried working in a laundry. It paid almost nothing. She was still poor, still an outcast. And so, she made a choice. She chose to betray the public's trust. She vanished. She changed her name. She became Mary Brown. And she went back to cooking. Years passed. The world forgot about her. A massive, mysterious, and violent typhoid outbreak crippled the Sloan Hospital for Women in New York, a maternity hospital. 25 people, doctors, nurses, and staff, became violently ill. Several of them died. The health department was baffled. This was a hospital. It should have been the cleanest place in the city. The source had to be inside. They investigated the kitchen staff. The cook, a new hire named Mary Brown, fit the description of the missing Typhoid Mary. Dr. Soper, the detective, and the police tracked her down. They found her in the hospital kitchen. This was the final betrayal. She knew she was the carrier. She knew the risk, and she chose to cook again. She chose to work in a maternity hospital, handling the food for newborn babies and the mothers who had just given birth. This time, there was no public sympathy. There was no media debate. She was no longer just a victim of science. She was a willful menace. Some called her a biological terrorist. She was arrested. She was taken back to North Brother Island, and this time, there was no release date. She was quarantined there permanently. Mary Mallon lived the next 23 years of her life in that isolated cottage, alone. She died there, in total isolation, nearly 26 years after her final capture. This brings us to the analysis, the core question that makes this a timeless story. Who was Typhoid Mary? Was she a villain, or was she a victim? The answer is that she was both. She was, absolutely, a victim. a victim of science she could not understand, a victim of contempt because she was a poor, uneducated immigrant. She was imprisoned without trial, violating her rights, all for a condition she felt was a lie. She had every right to be angry. But she also became the villain. The moment she was released, the moment she knew the truth, and she chose to cook again, changing her name to Mary Brown, she made a decision. When she took that job at the Sloan Maternity Hospital, she crossed the line from victim to antagonist. She prioritized her own freedom to work over the lives of newborn babies. This story is a dark, complex mirror of our own struggles with individual liberty versus public safety. How much freedom should one person have if that freedom kills others? Mary Mallon was not evil, in the way a serial killer is evil, but her stubbornness, her arrogance, and her absolute refusal to believe the science made her just as deadly. This is a tragedy that had no easy answers, a medical mystery that turned into a human rights crisis, which then turned into a crime.